When you learn how to negotiate effectively, you're learning how to create win-win situations in your day-to-day life. We don't have to be in a place where we're trying to get one over on somebody or we're trying to win. That's the wrong way to think about negotiation. The right way to think about negotiation is, how do we find the best outcome here? We have two parties, maybe more. How do we find a solution where everybody can win? When you hear the word negotiation, you probably think of business deals, lawyers, or Shark Tank. But the truth is, you're negotiating all day long. Who's making dinner, how work gets divided, when you need space, and even what you say yes or no to. In today's episode, we're talking about the art of negotiation, not as a power play, but as a mental health skill. How to communicate clearly, compromise without resentment, and protect your peace without guilt. Because healthy negotiation isn't about winning, it's about understanding boundaries and building relationships that actually feel sustainable. Well, today is my favorite topic. You know I love a good negotiation.
Of course. Everything is a negotiation, as you always tell me.
I always say that. Everything's a negotiation. So it's one of the reasons why we're having this conversation, because negotiation is an everyday skill. Mm-hmm. And if you can master the art of negotiation, it's absolutely going to change your life. So for those of you who don't know, my background is mostly in business. Cassie's more on the clinical side. I'm more on the business side. So I went to business school. I spent a few years, 3 years working for a company called Paychex doing technology sales. So I was trained there, and I also have a lot of fun hobbies that involve negotiation, and obviously run the side of modern therapy that's dealing with insurance companies, negotiating with them, and employees and things like that. So it's definitely a topic that I'm pretty versed in. But a lot of times when we hear the word negotiation, you automatically go to salespeople, lawyers, business, things like that. And the word negotiation, in the way we're going to talk about it today, is much more geared towards everyday life. When you learn how to negotiate effectively, you're learning how to create win-win situations in your day-to-day life. We don't have to be in a place where we're trying to get one over on somebody or we're trying to win. That's the wrong way to think about negotiation. The right way to think about negotiation is, how do we find the best outcome here? We have two parties, maybe more. How do we find a solution where everybody can win? And Harvard actually did a study that showed that when you approach negotiation from a place of let's find a compromised win-win solution, you're 80% more likely to actually land at a solution. So super important, and negotiation can be really used in any domain of daily living, whether you're trying to negotiate what household chores you're going to do for the week with your spouse, right? Whether you're trying to negotiate accommodations at work that are going to impact you every single day. Maybe it's negotiating with your toddler who has a little bit of an attitude and doesn't want to have something for dinner. Mm-hmm. So the way you approach it can really have a huge difference on your life. So I'm really excited to jump in and talk about this topic.
Yeah, I think that your background in sales has taught you that so many other things in life can be a negotiation in a way that maybe someone else wouldn't think of that otherwise.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Well, and that goes back to just like, I think how the media talks about it and how, it's just framed from growing up. You think of like you think of boiler room, right? Like you think of like high, fast paced environments on Wall Street or
Shark Tank.
It's like you're going to get in a room and just have to, get that win.
That's how I want to start negotiating the chores.
Yeah,
You're just
right.
going to sit with like what do they call investors?
Get a panel together, right?
Like, okay, I am proposing that I am going to do the dishes on this day and but that really is what it is, and it's finding a way that it works for everyone. I love that Harvard study that you quoted, because 80%, I mean, who wouldn't want an 80% chance of negotiating something that makes sense for all parties involved.
Yeah, and that aspect of everybody winning, I think, is a super important part of it. Because when you negotiate in a way that you have one party gets less than the other party, or maybe doesn't get what they want, it just creates a scenario where not everybody's happy. And when you're dealing with maybe like a one-off business situation, like, I don't know, maybe that's bearable, right? Like, maybe that's okay. But when you're dealing with a situation where, like, this is your spouse, right? This is someone that you're not gonna you're gonna be living with. You're gonna have to live with the consequences of the deal that you made, right?
Yes. And that you actually care about the other person. You're not going into it thinking, well, I want what's best for me and not what's best for the other person, because that would be terrible to do to someone in a relationship.
Right. Yeah. Your spouse gets upset. You might walk away with what you want, but you're gonna feel the other side of that, right? In some sort of way. And
that's why, really, I mean, healthy negotiation is a form of emotional regulation. It's saying, can I take myself out of just my own perspective for a second? Can I be clear, calm, and confident about this? Not guilt-driven, not avoiding the situation, not being overly reactive or being manipulative about a situation. It's, can I be cool, calm, and collected and still express what I need, but also hear what that other person needs too, especially if it's a situation that involves someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's talk about some reasons why people like avoid those situations, because at the end of the day, like, what negotiation is a conversation. Negotiation can't happen without having a discussion. And I think one of the main reasons what makes people hesitant to speak their mind is that they may be scared of the outcome.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think that they feel like maybe they're not going to be heard. People who grow up in very explosive households, when they go into negotiations, they tend to be actually more strong-headed about it of, my needs were not met when I was younger, or I had to really, really protect myself in a way that meant that negotiating in a positive way wasn't on the table. If I needed something, I had to fight for it. And you can see that play out in adult relationships, thinking that if we are, let's say, planning to go to a party, right? And you know that you want to leave at a certain time, instead of talking to your spouse and be like, okay, like, what is important to you tonight? What were you thinking as the time to leave? Here's kind of where I'm coming from and what I'm looking for. That type of negotiation from someone who's had that type of background might sound more like, hey, I'll go to this party tonight, but we are not staying later than 9 p.m. Period. And what that could do is immediately shut the other person down and make them feel like, well, why do you just get to decide? Maybe they get a little resentful. Or you might naturally gravitate towards a partner who's a little more passive, who's going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. We'll do that, whatever you need. But that's not hearing both sides of the story. And I think that that can explain one type of negotiation style and kind of where that stems from.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody has a different personality, and those personalities definitely play into, how effective we're going to be at communicating our wants and needs. And like, in that situation, right? Like, where maybe you're with somebody who's a little bit more passive, right? Just because they're in agreement or they agree to something that you're proposing doesn't necessarily mean that that's how they're truly feeling, right? And we have to be careful when we're approaching things in that way, that resentment doesn't build.
Right.
That's a big risk there.
Because you'll hear that later.
Right.
Oh, every time I want to see my friends, you're pulling me out and you're not letting me spend time with them. And that other person is thinking, well, there wasn't anything wrong with what I was doing. I was communicating to you that I wanted to leave at a certain time. And now all of a sudden that's a big problem. It wasn't a problem before. And you can see where that communication really gets lost there. But you, in the short term, are getting what you want, but that's not the only way a relationship functions.
Right. Yeah. It's like, what are you talking about?
So how big of a role would you say feeling safe in a relationship or a situation plays in how someone is going to negotiate in a positive way?
Oh, massively. I think the emotional state that you go into a discussion is going to strongly dictate the outcome. I mean, if you're going into a conversation where you're trying to negotiate like a win-win outcome, I would say it's almost impossible to do it effectively if you don't feel safe and comfortable. It's one of the reasons why, like, when you have these like boardroom negotiations, like, everybody's like very professional. They sit down, they're in a quiet, calm room environment. Like, you need to be focused, right, when you're going to have those tense conversations, because the topics that you're bringing up, a lot of time there are things riding on them that are important.
Yeah. So how would you rate different types of negotiations? Because obviously they're not all super important, right? Or on that same level. So if you're talking about a business who they're talking about, I don't know, acquiring another huge business, right? That's a huge negotiation.
Right.
But let's also break it down to back to that example. I want to leave the party by 9 p.m.
Yeah.
You want to stay till 2 o'clock in the morning, which it's totally hypothetical. You would never want to stay anywhere till 2 o'clock in the morning. But hypothetical scenario. How would you rate the different levels of importance of those situations? Or do you think that they're all equally important on some level?
Well, I think the consequences are heavier in certain situations, right? Like, the consequences of the acquisition conversation are like a lot more dramatic and heavier than like the leaving the party. But
Right.
I think that in a way they're very similar and very important. They're both very important, because the way you approach those micro negotiations, it really makes up like how you live your life, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're seceding, right, in one area over and over and over and over again, and not really like voicing yourself or being assertive about like what you're desiring, that's gonna just shape your whole life, right?
Yeah. You asked me before what makes negotiation hard. And I kind of went on a separate tangent of why some people are bad at it. But I think what now it's kind of reclicking to me. And I think you were talking about what makes it hard, as in people who don't want to negotiate, right? That's kind of what you were getting at there. So I think one of the biggest reasons that people don't want to negotiate, or they don't want to share their needs or their opinions on something, is that fear of rejection or being hurt, of feeling like, if I share what I'm thinking right now or what I need out of the situation, and the other person doesn't care or they shut me down, that's going to feel a lot worse than me just not getting what I want. Like, I'd rather just not get what I want than have to deal with that backlash from someone.
Well, that's the easier path, right? Because it doesn't require any confrontation.
Right.
Yeah. So I think like if you're trying to get to a destination and you have one way you can walk where the road's just clear and paved, and like maybe there's not like bears or scary animals, right? Like, you're going to take that road, right?
But it's also leading you where you don't want to go.
But
You're
it's
like,
also not
I
the right
was
direction.
going to New York City, but you know what? I'm just gonna go to upstate New York instead. It's fine. It kind of reminds me of, have you ever seen the TikToks where people are like, I would never tell a server that what they gave me was the wrong dish. Like, I'd be like, oh, you gave me like a bowl of rats. It probably was someone else's bowl of rats,
Right.
but I'll just eat it. Don't worry about it. Like, what they would have to do to get you to be like, no, or like, oh, my Uber driver dropped me off in the wrong city, but like, I just got out.
You'll just get another Uber, right? To avoid the conversation.
I'm not going to say anything. Like, yeah, that's kind of what that reminds me of. It makes me kind of think about black and white thinking, assuming that one person has to win, or that black and white thinking, a lot of times people think that there's only one type of outcome from something, or maybe really two, right? Like, it's either going to go to this extreme or it's going to go to that extreme. And that kind of thinking it's not super conducive to coming to like a happy medium with people, because if you're thinking the only way that I am ending this conversation is that I get what I want out of it, it's not going to be super productive.
Yeah. And it's not true. Like, I think it's like a falsity, right? Like, that, like, there's going to be one outcome on either side of that spectrum.
Yeah.
Like, almost always, every single time, even if you're not a good negotiator, like, you're going to land somewhere in the middle, and it's just usually probably not going to be as bad as you think it's going to be.
Yeah. Do you remember when Michael Scott was trying to, who was he? I think it was Oscar and Angela, about the babies playing instruments on her poster. Right? And he was like, it's creepy. I don't want to see it. And she's like, well, I want to see it. I'm not taking it down. And Michael had his binder and he's like, okay, we're looking for a win-win-win. Yeah. And then they said something that made complete sense. And he's like, that's a win-win. No, we don't want that. We can't do that. It needs to be win-win-win. And And he wanted to be like the master negotiator, but he was like looking up on Wikipedia like how to negotiate a situation.
It's so funny.
Like all of his tactics are just horrible.
Yeah. Hey, if you want to cut tension in your next negotiation, you can whip out the binder.
Whip
right?
out the binder.
Wait a second. But actually, to be honest, that's not a bad approach.
Not a bad approach.
When you're having a conversation, like, hey, let's just be upfront about it, right? Let's like, what would the book say about how we can find a win-win-win here? You know?
Yeah.
So.
I think that could work unless something else that kind of came to mind was it won't work when people are emotionally flooded. I think that's a really big thing when people are trying to get what they want out of a situation and their emotions are just taking over. Like that's that term flooding. Like they are just all consumed with how they're feeling. And in that moment, it can be really hard, to regulate yourself, right? Because you're so emotional. It's hard to even think straight.
Yeah.
And then you're definitely not thinking about your partner in that situation. It is next to impossible to be in that situation, try to regulate yourself, try listening to someone else, try to be assertive, try to get your needs met. It's just, it can't happen in that state of mind. So like you were saying, when you think about a boardroom where people are sitting and they're very professional and they all know what the agenda is, what they're there for, people who are emotionally flooded in that moment, they're not going to be able to get there until they regulate and they calm themselves down. So if you know that you are that type of person where you are waiting to have this conversation until emotions are really, really high, the number one thing you need to do is regulate yourself. Get yourself back to baseline. Even saying to that other person, I want to have a productive conversation. I physically cannot do that right now.
Yeah.
I need to get back to a place where I can think straight and this is not it, because nothing productive is going to happen when you're in that state of mind.
Well, I think you're describing a situation that's a result of poor negotiation skills, right? Because like if it gets to that point where you are feeling emotionally flooded, that's a conversation you should have had like months ago. Or
you could be emotionally flooded about something else too. Because I know I've been in that situation before where let's say there is like I don't know, we'll think back to leaving a party at a certain time or something where I have been, I don't know, upset with my family about something, let's say. And then I am so overwhelmed by that situation. And then the invite comes in for, a holiday dinner or something. And then I am just so emotional about the topic that the idea of not having control over that event could send me over the edge in that moment. Yeah. And I think you have been really good in recognizing when things like that happen and being like, okay, let's get back down to baseline. Let's chill out. Let's, you'll validate my feelings, but also be like, we need to get back down to earth a little bit with this and we need to chill out. Yeah. And then once that happens, then we can have a conversation about whatever else needs to happen and make sure that everyone's needs are met. Because I think that when you go into a situation with such high emotions, it's not even about what you're talking about in that moment. It's about so much other stuff. Because you have said things like that to me before, like, I don't think this situation is that big of a deal. And I'm like, this situation, like I'm talking about 75 different situations where you're like, I thought we were talking about dinner. Like, what happened?
Yeah, because life's hard and there's a lot of stuff that goes on.
Yeah.
And that's why timing is so important, right?
And also acknowledging something that might be really important to one person sometimes is just truly not that important to another person. And that is not what we mean when we say being passive. Being passive is when you do actually have an opinion about something and you're just not sharing it. If you truly are a super chill person and someone is bringing something to you and saying, this is best case scenario for me, you don't have a lot of stake in it. You don't really care either way. You're fine with whatever the outcome is. Great. Give them exactly what they're asking for and move on. Yeah. There's definitely nothing wrong with that. It doesn't always need to be a back and forth. When we talk about the back and forth, we're saying that both people have an opinion and a stake in what that outcome is. Right. Because there truly are times where you're just like, yeah, I don't care. Whatever you want. You want to leave at this time? You want to get this for dinner? You want to go there? That's fine.
Choose your battles, right? Like, is this a hill you want to die on, right? How important is it to you and your value system?
Yeah, because if it's truly not important, then great. Give the person what they're asking for and move on, and everyone can be happy.
Yeah, what a lot of people get caught into is just kind of arguing for the sake of arguing. Yeah. Right? And that's a pattern. A lot of times that can be really damaging. Yeah. To the health of a relationship, to your mental health. So it's definitely something you want to check. And really the root of that is ego.
Yeah. Yep. Being very prideful and thinking that if I have an opinion about something, it's the only opinion and no one else is allowed to disagree with me. Or bringing something up and feeling like you can't compromise because you've already been there.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I already said what I wanted to say. And even though my opinion has changed and this person is right, we've all been there in fights where you're like, I just can't right now tell them that they are right. Even if you have brought up points that are correct, that it's a pride issue and not being able to step back and be like, okay, you know what? You are right about that. So I am going to give in this moment because that makes sense.
It's hard to do.
It's so hard to do.
Yeah.
I remember I was, I used to do a lot of couples counseling. And typically when someone brings up something that their partner did or that they, something they didn't like, they are always very defensive. Well, how could you say that I did that? That's not really what happened. That doesn't make any sense. You're making that up or you're blowing it out of proportion.
It's almost like a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, you always see that. But I had this one couple where they were new and it started happening. The husband was like, you always do this. And like, I can't stand when you do this. And it's so like unbelievable that I tell you this and you keep doing it. And so I'm kind of bracing myself for the response. I'm like, okay, I already know what I'm going to say because I know what she's going to respond. And she just looked at him and was like, yeah, you're right. I do that. I'm really sorry. And I was like, why are you guys here? You know what I mean? You guys, what? I'm like, you just graduated couples counseling. So I'm like, who does that in the middle of a fight? Like, and it was a heated moment too. And I was just so impressed. And I'm like, that is such a skill. And that is such a sign that someone is not prideful because that is really hard to do. I was thoroughly impressed.
Yeah. That is amazing.
Yeah. I was like, you need to teach me.
Yeah, not the norm, right?
Not the norm at all. So I think that is, and it also goes back to where that relationship you've had with your parents when you're younger and what you grew up in, how is that impacting your relationships now? I think that everybody has things that they struggle with and that they bring from their past. And it's great to acknowledge it. It's not an excuse. It's not to say, well, I struggled with this, therefore I'm allowed to react this way all the time. I think it's a learning tool and it's an opportunity to grow. But understanding that and having your partner understand that can be really impactful to know, how am I approaching situations where I need something and my partner needs something? What is my initial reaction to that?
Right. And I kind of on that point, like, I think that a lot of people think negotiation is very logical, right? And like a big piece of it is emotional. I mean, it's all emotional. We're emotional creatures. So nothing ever gets done without that emotional piece.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like on a bigger scale, right? Like you're dealing with like presidents of countries, right? Like, or, like people in control of armies. Like, you want to think that people in power are making like decisions based on like logic and groundedness and calmness.
I don't know how many people think that.
They don't. You want to think it, but like, it's like you get emotional.
So far beyond that.
Things, someone gets ticked off and like big decisions are made and like.
We want to talk about ego. It's like, yeah, when you talk about people who are really high up at the top of whatever they're at the top of,
right?
It's an ego problem.
Right. So one of the best things that we can do when we're going into a conversation where there's a negotiation is going to take place, a micro negotiation, is like come at it from emotion first and understanding that like, hey, there's an emotional factor here that needs to be addressed, right? And like the biggest way we can build that is through tactical empathy. Chris Voss, he wrote a book called Never Split the Difference. He's a hostage negotiator, so someone very familiar with those scenarios, high stakes scenarios. And he wrote this book about different skills we can use in those negotiations. And this is one of the principles from this book. Basically, like really heavily relying on the use of empathy, which is very similar to actually how we do in the therapy seat, right?
Yeah.
But just basically like using language that helps the other person understand that you're here for a compromise. You're here, you hear them, and a simple mirror technique can work great with that, right? Like, so if we're in a conversation where like, well, let's just use, since we've been using the party one. If I was the one that wanted to stay until 2 a.m. and you were the one that wanted to go home at 9 p.m., which is probably, I think, how that would play out. I think you'd be the one that would want to go home early.
Oh, definitely. The reason that stuck with me is because I want to leave every party early.
You
It's
know
not
what?
personal.
To be honest, it would be a pretty easy negotiation because I'd be like, let's go.
That's what I'm saying. You would never stay till 2 a.m. You'd be like, just cancel
I wouldn't
it.
fight about that. But
Hypothetically,
if I wanted to stay until 2 p.m., or 2 a.m., I would word it like, hey, I understand you want to leave at 9 p.m. You probably worked all day. You're really tired. I get that, and I really appreciate that. I've been feeling very kind of cooped up, and I haven't had a whole lot of opportunities to interact with some of these friends in a long time. What do you think about maybe staying until 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. right? Like, could we compromise there? And approaching it like that, rather than just saying, no, like, I need this, I need to stay here, like, we need to do this, like, you can go home if you want, right? Like, that scenario is going to tell the other person that, hey, I don't really care about how you're feeling or what you need. I'm really just I want to take this because I need this.
yeah.
And that's guaranteed going to lead to a huge fight when you get home, probably, right?
Yes, 100%. Because the biggest thing that couples fight about with these smaller things is that they feel like they're not being heard in a situation. And that's what just escalates it so much. So I love that example of, I know what you're going through. I hear that, but also here's what I'm going through and what I could really use. And to just go in with that willingness to compromise a little bit. So if you went in saying, no, I want to leave at 2 a.m., it doesn't matter what you say, that other person is going to feel they're going to feel like, okay, I can't do anything here.
And what tactical empathy does is disarm tension. That's the goal of tactical empathy when you implement it in that way. Like, the goal is not necessarily to agree. Like, we can still disagree, but when you come at it using those skills, you're disarming tension.
Yeah.
And when people feel like they're heard, they soften.
Yep.
And it makes having a conversation much easier.
Yep, absolutely. The next tip is to understand the power of no. Giving people the opportunity to say no. When people feel like they're backed in a corner and like they have no way out, it makes them very uncomfortable. It makes them feel like I don't have any power or control in this situation. And no matter what anyone says, we are creatures who crave some sort of power and control, no matter what is going on. So giving people the opportunity to say no can be really, really impactful.
Well, it's like, we're almost wired to say no. Like, by default, like, humans are wired to say no. Like, and if you think about this, like, for an example, like a telemarketing call, or like someone comes to your door to sell you something, like, you just like automatically go to no.
Yep.
Because it's easier. No.
Yep.
So,
no, thank you.
So, by wording things like, if you're trying to initiate a discussion, you're saying like, would now be a bad time to talk about this solution. It's just an easy thing to just say, oh no, it wouldn't be a bad time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then if they say, okay, it's not a good time right now, can we talk later? You're getting that information of what do they need in this moment to even have this conversation.
Right.
It also makes me think about silence, the use of using silence in a conversation.
Silence is so hard sometimes.
It is.
It's they used to, when I was doing sales training, they would talk a lot about silence. And when you were going to close a sale, like, a big habit that people get caught up in is just like closing the sale, getting the buy-in from whoever is buying from you, and then just like you just keep talking. It's like when you close and you get a yes and an agreement, just stop, right? Just pause, just don't say anything, let it sink. So that principle can carry over to our everyday life conversations of like, when you say something that might be difficult for the person on the other side of the table to hear, just like drop it and then let it float down.
Give them a second.
Just give them a second to process it.
Yeah. It's hard because so many of us just want to fill that silence. In therapy, you see that a lot.
Yeah.
My earlier days when I first started doing therapy versus now feeling more confident, my use of silence can be very different than it was at the beginning. In the beginning, if it was silent, even for a few moments, I would feel like I'm failing. Why can't I get my client to talk? Like
Yeah.
the only goal in this moment is to get them to talk and to open up to me, and not realizing that maybe that silence was very useful and maybe they needed a second. Not everybody processes things by saying things out loud. That sometimes people just need that moment to really sit and think about things,
Yeah.
and they're very thoughtful about how they respond to things. Some people are just super reactive. They'll just say everything that's on their mind and they don't need a moment of silence. But other people do. And
Yeah.
acknowledging that that can be useful, and the type of personality of the person you're talking to, letting that be there and trying not to be so uncomfortable with it.
Yeah, that personality aspect is so important. Like knowing your audience, like knowing who you're talking to. I think that's super underrated, and I
Yeah.
think like, this especially comes into play when like, you're dealing with like maybe people on a very deeper level versus people you maybe just recently met. So any conversation you're going to, kind of having that frame of mind of like, hey, what's the personality type of this person?
Yeah.
Like, are they someone that gets overwhelmed very easily? Are they someone that like is gonna make better decisions if like they're sitting down? How are they at multitasking? Like what so like all those factors come into play. But I'm
Definitely.
curious, like, because that's an interesting point you brought up about how things have changed for you from the beginning when you were a therapist to more recently. Like, how did you get comfortable sitting in that silence?
I think that my confidence as a therapist just grew over time. And that as I felt more like I am actually making a difference in people's lives and getting feedback with people, oh, I'm feeling a lot better, or that thing that you said to me last week really worked. Over time, I learned that, my knowledge base and the skills that I have acquired were useful to people. And I didn't have to measure that by how much they were talking in a session, or, having all the right answers all the time. I think letting it sit for a second didn't feel so uncomfortable because I just knew, okay, it's not because I'm a bad therapist. And I think that's why we jump to fill the silence so quickly, is because we think that it says something negative about us, that it's silent. Like, well, it must be silent because, like, you must be silent because I'm a bad wife, or because I'm a bad therapist, or because I'm a bad daughter. My mom has nothing to say to me right now. Where really the reality might be that other person just needs a second and it's okay. So I think just building my confidence in general helped me more in that moment to not take it so personally, and also made me think this shouldn't be about me. I think when you first become a therapist, you make it so much about yourself because you don't know how else to do it. You're just learning. And I would make it about me. I would sit there and think, okay, like, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Being more in my head. And when you can kind of pull yourself out of it and really focus on the other person, like focus on your client more than yourself,
Sure.
you will notice you're not obsessively thinking about that kind of stuff as much.
Yeah, and I mean, that's how you come up with win-wins, right? Like, if you're like whoever's sitting across from you, like, you need to just put yourself in their shoes,
Yeah.
and like getting out of that default like mindset of like me,
Right.
because that's all we find relevant, really. Like,
Yeah.
we're all just living our own independent lives, like, but
Yeah.
taking that moment to just say like, hey, I'm curious, like, coming from a place of curiosity, what's going on in your head? Like, what could they be thinking right now? And
Yeah.
like, what do they care about?
Yeah.
And when you start doing that, making a practice of that, you just get way further.
Yeah, because sometimes silence in a therapy session, in a conversation with your spouse, sometimes it is a sign that things are not progressing. And that's okay. It's okay to sit in that silence for a second and acknowledge that that is information. Sometimes it is just the other person chilling out for a second and
Yeah.
you're going to get back on track. But if you're noticing we're not getting back on track and it is a sign that things are stalling, again, it doesn't mean I'm a bad therapist, I'm a bad wife. It just means that's information I can use now. So like you said, I'm curious, what are you thinking about? Or, oh, whenever we get into that specific topic about your family, I notice you don't talk as much. Why do you think that's your default go-to when we're talking about this? Or, if it's, your husband, you notice is really quiet when you share your feelings. Like, hey, I'm trying to express how I feel. And I notice that when I do that, you kind of shut down and you don't really talk much anymore. Like, that makes me feel X way. Is that something we can talk about a little bit more? And I need some more feedback from you when I'm sharing things with you. Like using it as information rather than something to be terrified of, I think can be really powerful.
Yeah, for sure. For people, because there are some personality types that are very, very quick to just talk. And like they need to fill that space, and sometimes the words that are coming out of the mouth are not very productive, right? What are some ways we can like just take a moment and like stop ourselves from word vomiting, so to speak?
Oh, it's so
Yeah.
hard. It's so hard because it's something I definitely struggle with. I think that the first thing you could do is pause before you say something. If you could just take 1, 2, 3 seconds, just take a break before something comes out, I think that it can regulate you a little bit. It can help you gather your thoughts and express what you're saying in a more coherent way. Also, be 100% sure that the other person is done speaking. I know it's something that I have struggled with in the past. I still struggle with it sometimes. I have to be really mindful of it, where your brain is just going and you have so much to say that someone can get half a sentence out and you're jumping in because you think you're being really relatable or you're carrying on the conversation, when the reality is you're cutting the person off. And I've had to really stop and think, okay, is this person completely done speaking? Or even asking, okay, did you have anything else about that point? Because I want to bring up like this next thing that I'm thinking of. But being really mindful that that is something that you struggle with so that you can allow the other person to talk. Because when you are the more dominant person when it comes to communicating, there's a really high likelihood that your partner has gotten used to not being able to speak as much. And it doesn't mean that they don't have a lot of things to say. It means they don't have the space to say it.
Yeah.
So noticing, hey, I'm doing a lot of the talking. Do you have something to step in with? Can be really helpful.
Yeah, you saying that makes me think of a concept like learned helplessness, right? Where,
Yeah.
like, it's just like where there's an elephant that's like, as a baby elephant, it's like tied with a little rope to a tree, right? And like it's just used to it's same thing. It goes around the tree. It can't get further away, and then like the elephant grows up bigger, and obviously like the elephant, maybe the leash is removed or whatever, and the elephant just stays where it's at because it's just learned that like, oh, I can't get away, so I'm not gonna try. And it's like if you're in a scenario where someone's just domineering or overpowering, you just kind of get in a vibe of accepting the status quo and finding that voice to speak up and negotiate the things that you're wanting is like, that's important to do.
Yep.
For the health of an entire relationship. It's not healthy to just accept the status quo passively and not get what you want. You may feel like you're doing it for someone else, or that like it's okay. You have permission to like get what you want out of life, and you can do that while still allowing whoever you're with to get what they want.
Yeah, I think that assuming positive intent for people can be really helpful in these scenarios too. Let's say that is your relationship where you feel like you have to be really passive and you can't express yourself because the other person is so domineering. Assume positive intent that maybe they don't even know that they're doing that, and that if you talk to them about it and give them the opportunity to work on it, that they probably really do care about what you think and they want you to have a say in it. It might be something that they have to work on though. So if you come in like, you always do this and it's horrible and I can't stand it, and it makes me feel like I have no voice, again, that person is not going to feel like, okay, we can really have this conversation. If you say, hey, I feel like when we talked about whatever situation the other day, I didn't have an opportunity to talk, and sometimes I feel like you take over these conversations and I don't get to share how I feel. That could be a learning opportunity then. So it's okay to point these things out and to make it a more even playing field for these types of conversations.
Yeah, and when we're dealing with these like little micro negotiations, like I think like just working towards the yes is important. Like working towards that win-win is important. And a lot of times I think it's easy to get caught up in like not reading the deeper meanings behind statements, right? So like if I'll just use an example of like a couple or husband wife again, like if a wife is saying like, hey, You didn't do the dishes again. You didn't do the dishes again. You didn't clean up. You didn't like, is it really about the dishes? Is it? I don't know. Maybe it's more of like, I don't feel supported.
Yeah.
And when you understand that it's, I don't feel supported, from your perspective, you're going to understand better how to like negotiate that, right? It's not always about the dishes, right?
Yeah. Going back and actually reflecting on, are you having the same type of negotiation over and over, like with chores or something like that? Then yeah, there probably is something deeper that you guys are not aligned. And that should be a further conversation, because if you're having to have the same conversations over and over, then obviously something isn't sticking.
Yeah. And, just if you find yourself in that position where like over and over again, you feel like, oh, I'm having the same conversations, I'm doing the same thing. Like, you need to ask yourself like, hey, what needs to happen here? We need to change something, right? Because it's like the definition of insanity is like doing the same thing over and over again with the same result, right? Like, or without different results. And sometimes that might even involve bringing in a third party, right? Like a mediator. A therapist can be a great mediator. That's one route you can take. Sometimes bringing in another family member, another trusted family member that has a neutral relationship with both of you can be really helpful.
That's why, we're so biased, but going to a therapist is the best, because they don't have a stake in what happens.
Right.
Like, they want you to be happy. They want you to have a healthy relationship, but it doesn't make a difference to them if you do the dishes or you do the dishes. Like, there's no, like, it doesn't matter to them. It matters how you're communicating, what your guys are both getting out of a situation. So having someone who is just a complete neutral third party, it's so amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people are hesitant to do that because, they don't want to involve other people in their stuff, or they,
I get it.
And listen, I get that. But like, there's a little bit of ego there too, right? And kind of what we talked about earlier is like, put that ego aside. Like, when you put ego aside, things get better.
A lot of stuff happens.
Solutions get reached. People make agreements, and just overall, like, life improves.
Yeah. So I want you to give us a real life example of how you would handle a negotiation.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you a scenario. Let's say that your friend invited you to go on vacation with them.
Okay.
And we'll use like a bachelor party, for example, because I know a lot of these weddings, bachelorette parties they've caused a lot of stress for people recently. It's a very hot topic.
Yeah.
Invited you to his bachelor party, and he wants to go to Japan for a week.
Okay.
And it's going to cost you, $7,000 and an entire week.
Oh,
and
he's balling out.
5 days of PTO. Well, usually he is not balling out. Usually the groomsmen are balling out.
Yeah.
You have to use 5 days of PTO. You have to leave your wife and kids. It's a whole ordeal. But you really want to support him, and you want to be a part of his life. You want to be a part of his wedding. You care deeply about, his marriage.
Yeah.
How do you handle that if your end goal is to not go? You don't want to go to this.
Okay.
It's too much.
Yep.
You can't afford it. You can't afford to give the time away, but you don't want to damage that relationship. Walk me through how you would go about that.
Yeah. So that's an interesting situation. I guess I would have to think about like, how close is this friend to me? That would be the first.
Close enough. You don't want to mess up the relationship. You care deeply about him.
You value the relationship.
Very, very much so.
If I did not want to go, but I wanted to salvage the relationship, well, I think that I would set up a conversation with him, and it would have to be like, I would not make it like a casual, like, I wouldn't respond to the text, hey, I can't make it, right? Like, that's what I would not do.
You remove yourself from the group text.
Just
Japan 2026.
Remove from the group chat.
Brandon left.
Don't do that. Because you have to understand that, like, from his perspective, it's very important to him. Like, he's getting married. It's a big day. He'll remember it forever. You're his buddy. He wants all of his buddies there. He may not be completely thinking through like the ramifications of asking seven people to do that. He also obviously isn't married yet, so he doesn't have children. He doesn't have a family. He doesn't fully understand like what it would be like for somebody to, get up and take a trip like that when they have like young kids and stuff like that. So you can't blame him for that. So you can't be mad at him. You don't want to come at it from a place of like, oh, he doesn't. How can he ask me to do this? That's so messed up. He doesn't. So you have to think about how he's thinking through it. So I would probably just set up a like a one-on-one conversation with him. I'd probably ask him if he wants to, hang out or go grab some coffee or something. Like, I would make it like like kind of like a lighthearted, fun environment, something that we both like to do. And I wouldn't like just drop it immediately upon meeting with him. I'd probably like, let things warm up a little bit. I'd ask him a lot of questions about himself. I'd like get really excited. I'd make sure to express excitement about his everything he has going on in his life, so that he understands that like I care about him and I'm excited for him. And then I would just find a way to communicate to him that I can't make it, and I would when I would be doing that, I would make sure to validate how important the day is and how important the trip is, and I know how important it is to him, and I would just communicate that unfortunately like I'm not going to be able to make it, and I'm crushed about it, like really truly, like I want to go so bad, and I know how important it is to you, and it makes me feel like I don't want to drop the ball on our friendship, and I hope you don't view it as me doing that, because I really care so deeply. And when the wedding comes, like I'm gonna be there, and it's gonna be awesome, and everything else like locally I'm gonna be fully involved in. It's just Japan is like really far, and it's a long time. It's gonna be, work is giving me a lot of issues about getting the time off. It's gonna just be a tremendous amount of pressure to put on Cassie to be alone with the kids for that amount of time, and it's not going to be possible for me to make it there with you. And 100% like I'm going to be there with you in spirit, but maybe we can do something locally when you get back, right? Like I'd love to take you somewhere for the day. We can just we can invite a couple buddies and we can just do something locally, and I would love to do that to celebrate your wedding. So hopefully you're not too crushed about this. But I want you guys to have the best time, and I'm really looking forward to everything else involving the wedding. So that's probably how I would handle it, and hopefully if he's a good friend, he'll understand my perspective, and he won't be too mad at me, and we can kind of agree to not go amicably, which I think if like you have a friend in your life like that, like that really should be kind of how they respond. And I think if they don't respond that way in a way that's understanding, like I really think that's more on them than on you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I love that you said, I'll do something locally with you. That's kind of where that negotiation piece comes in, is okay, you want this big trip. I want no trip. So maybe the middle ground is let's do something for a day or for one overnight. That's a little bit more local. That is not as much money. We could do over like a weekend.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I think that also at the end of it, allowing space for the other person, acknowledging they might be a little upset, and that's okay. It's okay for them to be upset.
And like I would let him communicate that to me. Like I would let him, if he was upset, like I'd let him process it with me.
Yeah.
And I'd like validate him, and I'd be like, he'd be like, oh man, like I can just picture the conversation going like, oh, like that's really a bummer, dude. Like I really wanted you to be there. I had all this stuff planned, like, you're my bro, like, it's not going to be the same there without you. Like I'd let him say all that, and I'd be like, I know. And I'd kind of like, I'd sit in that with him.
Yeah. Validate that.
Yeah. So, but that's the thing about negotiation. Like, it's finding that win-win, finding that compromise, and, in a way that like, he'll still go, he'll have his trip. I'm not raining on his trip other than like not going,
right.
But he's still gonna have his bachelor
better
party.
than going and being resentful the whole time.
He doesn't have to like whereas like someone maybe unskilled in negotiation, would come at it from a perspective of like, how can he ask me this, like, and almost like getting a little bit mad about it, and maybe not thinking through like his perspective, and then like he has to go on his bachelor party, like worried about how I'm feeling about it at home, and like letting him sit with that, like, so So yeah, I think that hopefully that would be a good way to like handle it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have one more scenario here.
Yeah.
So we are starting a new series on the podcast where we end with "Am I the problem?" from Reddit. Now we all know it as "Am I the a-hole?" from
Yeah.
Reddit, but we are not going to use that. We're going to say "Am I the
Right.
problem?"
We're professional here.
All right. So I'm going to read out the scenario
Okay.
and then we will kind of take
Talk
it from
about it.
there. So me, 28 female, and my boyfriend of 2 years, 44 male, have moved in together 1 year ago, and we had an argument about it some days ago. He tried to make me understand his point of view, but I'm not sure I can accept it. When I was living alone, I would do the daily chores as cleaning, dishes, and doing my laundry, plus the chores of a room by week. First week of the month, bathroom, second week, living room, and so on. It's a way for me to have a clean house without doing too much in one time, and when guests come, I don't have to clean absolutely all in a rush. I tried to keep this way of doing things little by little when we moved in together, but it has been hard since then. If I don't start cleaning, he will not start either, and he will not do the chores unless it's critical. For example, he will only do laundry if he doesn't have any clean underwear, but never more. Even if bed sheets need to be washed too, that's apparently up to me. This example applies to dishes, laundry, dusting, vacuuming, taking out the trash, every daily chore. I made lists, giving 1 whole week to do the room chores he has to, reminding him, and I don't even put as much chores as I do for myself for the same room, but he just won't do it. I talked to him about this as it's becoming an issue, and he explained me this. As I have higher cleaning standards than him, it's hard for him to meet my standards. As he tolerates more dirt than me, he needs to meet my he needs to meet my standards. I lowered it for him, but even so. So it adds more mental load to him than if he was living alone. So he has a hard time following my planning. The thing is, we are 2 human beings together, and I can't do it alone. And as I listen to his point of view, I have a hard time accepting it as the right excuse not to do at least 3/4 of what I do. Am I the problem for not being more tolerant and accepting his point of view?
Interesting. Okay, so just to recap, we have female moves in with her boyfriend.
And there is a significant age gap. So she's 28 and he's 44.
Oh, that is a big age gap. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so they move in together, and it sounds like she has higher cleaning standards than he does, and she wants a clean house and has a plan and takes actions to do that, and he is not completely on board,
Right.
and really just is not performing normal household chores up to her standard, and she is unsure if she's the problem because she is getting upset with him for not
Right.
engaging in the way she wants him to.
Is she the problem?
Is she the problem? Well, just from hearing this scenario, I think that it really sounds like there's a big value misalignment.
Huge. Huge. I mean, I don't think that she's the problem. I think that she is expressing to him how she's feeling. She's saying, hey, I need your help with this. But also she clearly is accepting him of not doing it as well. I mean, I don't know how long you're going to stay with someone who's only doing laundry when they don't have underwear. I mean, it doesn't sound like her cleaning standards are that high. It sounds like his are very, very low.
Right. And this is a common problem, especially
Yeah.
like when you like move in with somebody, right? Because you can be dating and like
Yeah.
it doesn't come up, right? Like you're not talking about how household chores are managed
Right.
until you're actually living together and you're in that scenario.
And what does it look like when they're married, when they have children,
Right.
if they have pets? I mean, it sounds like you said, that value misalignment of she is coming and saying, this is important to me. I feel like our house is dirty. I'm trying to build a home with you. And he's saying, well, your standards are too high. I'm not meeting that. But he's not saying, so, it's one thing. Yeah, some people are clean freaks. And it's like, listen, if you want the house that clean, that's on you. I don't need it to be that clean. So I'm not going to, vacuum every single day. But if you want to, great. It sounds like she's just like, do your laundry, help me strip the sheets every once in a while. Like, let's not have the house be filthy. And he's just like, I'm only going to do laundry when I don't have underwear, is kind of like, I don't know that her standards are that crazy high, but we also don't know how extensive these conversations were, how much she's communicating with him. But my take would be that they definitely need to work on communication. They need to get their values aligned. And I would just be really cautious about these red flags if this is someone who you are considering marrying.
Yeah.
That I don't know that these red flags are going to change. And that would be information I would definitely take in and I would take it really seriously of if you are communicating to him your needs and he is ignoring them, that's a sign of something much bigger, way beyond cleaning that
Yeah,
is
right.
not going to magically get
Like,
better.
it's not necessarily about the cleaning. It goes a
Yeah.
lot deeper. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
He's
would agree.
ignoring
I do
her.
not think she's the problem.
I don't think she's the problem. No.
And I think if she wants to stay in that relationship, I think there needs to be some major discussions
Yeah.
about, what the standards are.
And maybe bringing in a third party, like going to a couples therapist and saying, hey, I am trying to communicate as much as I can to him. It's not working.
Yeah. So if we're looking at the situation, so I think we've established that she's not the problem.
She's not the problem.
If we were looking at this situation in the context of like a negotiation, like an opportunity for negotiation here, if he is absolutely like really hesitant or not willing to do certain chores, like I think a conversation needs to be had where we can try to find a compromise of like, okay, that's fine. Your standards aren't the same as mine. I'll do this stuff, but like that doesn't mean you don't get to contribute.
You
like,
have to do something equal.
what are some of the things that you hold close to your value system that you can contribute to the house in, right?
Yeah.
And like kind of identifying those areas.
Right. Because if you believe, okay, it's not a big red flag, he literally just doesn't like cleaning. Everything else about him is wonderful. He's not totally ignoring me on any other scenario, and I don't think it's a huge red flag. I agree with that. Maybe he is an amazing cook and he loves to cook.
Right.
Okay, you're going to meal prep all of our food and
Yeah.
you're going to cook all of our dinners.
I mean, that's very much how we did it, right? Like I do not like doing dishes. I mean, I'll do them if I have to, but it's not, I don't like doing that.
Yeah.
You, on the other hand, are like a superhuman dishwasher. So I'll do the cooking and you do the cleaning. And like that's how it works. And that's a example of a good win-win setup.
But it has to be equal value. So it can't be you make dinner and then she has to go clean the entire house and strip your sheets and do
Right.
the laundry and do all
Right.
those things. But if there's other things, let's say if they did have a pet, like, okay, I do the cleaning, but you do all the cooking, you walk the
You're gonna walk
dog,
the dog.
and you're going to take the garbage out when I leave it by the front door. Like those things. If you feel like you can come up with enough that makes it an equal partnership where maybe he's not going to clean, but yes, there's other things he could do that are of equal time and energy value, then I would say try that route. But if you think that it's more of a deeper red flag, it's something to really look into further.
100%.
Yeah.
Oh, that was fun.
That was fun.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks for teaching us how to negotiate.
You're welcome.